John Blake presents Undercover War, written by Harry Mccallion and read by Colin Mace.
This book is dedicated to the memory of Sergeant Paul Oram, MM, and Sergeant Alistair Slater, MM, two warriors who made the ultimate sacrifice for their regiments, their country, and peace in Northern Ireland. Chapter 1. The Beginning. The MRF. When the first units of the British Army deployed to Northern Ireland in August 1969, they were completely unprepared for the maelstrom of violence that was about to engulf the province. Uniformed soldiers who were trained to stand against the armies of the Warsaw Pact instead found themselves in the middle of a bitter sectarian conflict. Rather than fighting Soviet tanks on the open plains of North Germany, they faced enemies who fought from the shadows, hiding themselves among the civilian population and only breaking cover when they were ready to attack. Initial attempts to pursue a covert war against this foe were an unmitigated disaster. Incompetence, short-sightedness, and murderous ill-discipline handed a propaganda coup to the enemy. The British Army's reputation was damaged for decades, and these early failures helped entrench the power of the militant organisations, ultimately prolonging the conflict in Ulster. It was only with the deployment of professionally trained undercover units some years later that the British security services were able to undo these early mistakes and take the war to the terrorists with deadly efficiency. The first British covert unit to be established in Northern Ireland was the Military Reaction Force, MRF. Between 1970 and 1972, the senior British officer in Belfast was Brigadier Frank Kitson. Kitson's early career had been spent suppressing colonial independence movements in the aftermath of the Second World War. The experiences he gained and the books he wrote on the subject led to him being seen in military circles as an important authority on the subject of fighting insurgents. While the exact origins of the MRF are hazy, the unit's operating philosophy seems to have been based on Kitson's experiences fighting the Mau Mau in Kenya during the early 1950s. Kitson viewed insurgents as gangs who were both separate from the wider population, yet at the same time relied on them for support. His strategy was to create counter-gangs of his own, to infiltrate the enemy and identify key members for arrest. Although these counter-gangs were officially intended as an intelligence-gathering tool, Kitson also noted in his writings the importance of controlling and manipulating the wider population to deny insurgents a support base. Footnote: likening a gang to a fish and the wider population to the water it swims in, Kitson wrote, "If a fish has got to be destroyed, it can be attacked directly by rod or net, providing it is in the sort of position which gives these methods a chance of success. But if the rod and net cannot succeed by themselves, it may be necessary to do something to the water which will force the fish into a position where it can be caught. Conceivably, it might be necessary to kill the fish by polluting the water." Low-Intensity Operations, 1971. Further on, he writes, "Conditions can be made reasonably uncomfortable for the population as a whole in order to provide an incentive for a return to normal life, and to act as a deterrent towards the resumption of the campaign." These two goals were combined to disastrous effect in the MRF. While Brigadier Kitson's tactics may have been successful against unsophisticated post-colonial insurgencies, they were to prove almost completely ineffective against a well-organized European terrorist group like the Provisional IRA. The MRF was based at a fenced-off compound within Palace Barracks in the North Belfast suburb of Hollywood. Officially, the MRF was a company-level establishment commanded by a captain, initially Captain Arthur Watchus, then later Captain James McGregor. However, the unit operated entirely outside the normal chain of command, working as an independent asset that answered directly to Kitson's Brigade HQ. This kind of unconventional command structure is not unusual for Special Forces units. However, the threat to military discipline it poses is normally tempered by institutional traditions and history. As an ad hoc unit created in the field, the MRF had no such restraints.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?